Think you know everything about your favorite fictional families? Tonight, I'm about to shatter everything you thought you knew about the characters we grew up watching. What if I told you that beneath the laughs and heartwarming moments, these beloved family shows have been hiding some seriously dark psychological truths? Get ready, because we're diving deep into the twisted minds of television's most iconic families, and trust me, you'll never look at them the same way again. Welcome back to another mind-bending exploration, where we peel back the layers of pop culture to reveal the uncomfortable realities lurking beneath the surface. I'm your host, and today we're embarking on a journey that will fundamentally change how you view family dynamics on screen. We're not just talking about quirky character traits or funny running gags here. We're exposing genuine psychological disorders, toxic behaviors, and dysfunctional patterns that would make any therapist's notebook overflow with red flags. Have you ever wondered why certain family sitcoms feel so uncomfortably familiar? Why we laugh at situations that, in real life, would have us calling social services? That's because these shows, intentionally or not, mirror the darkest aspects of human psychology wrapped in a comedic package. Tonight, we are unwrapping that package and examining what's really inside. Let's start with something that might shock you about animated families. You know those characters we quote daily and consider harmless entertainment? Well, they're actually perfect case studies for some of the most destructive personality traits known to psychology. Take the concept of narcissistic behavior patterns, for instance. We see characters who consistently put their own desires above family welfare, manipulate situations to benefit themselves, and show zero empathy for others' suffering. Consider how often we witness parents in these shows making decisions that directly harm their children's emotional development. They dismiss their kids' feelings, mock their aspirations, and create environments where psychological safety doesn't exist. Yet we laugh because it's presented as comedy. The truth is, if these behaviors occurred in real families, we'd recognize them as forms of emotional abuse. But the darkness goes deeper than individual character flaws. These shows often normalize dysfunction by presenting it as typical family life. Children viewers internalize these relationship patterns as normal, potentially carrying these toxic blueprints into their own future families. It's a cycle that perpetuates unhealthy dynamics across generations, all disguised as entertainment. Let's examine the phenomenon of scapegoating within fictional families. There's almost always that one family member who bears the brunt of everyone else's dysfunction. They become the emotional dumping ground, the target of ridicule, and the convenient explanation for all family problems. This character serves as the family's pressure valve, allowing other members to avoid confronting their own issues by projecting everything onto this unfortunate soul. What's particularly disturbing is how these scapegoated characters are often portrayed as deserving their treatment. The show's narrative subtly suggests that their suffering is justified, teaching audiences that certain people are acceptable targets for cruelty. This psychological manipulation is incredibly sophisticated and deeply harmful, especially when absorbed by impressionable viewers. Moving on to another dark pattern, we see frequent examples of emotional manipulation disguised as parental love. Characters use guilt, shame, and conditional affection to control family members' behavior. They withdraw love as punishment and offer it as reward, creating anxious attachment patterns that would haunt real children for life. The scary part is how these manipulation tactics are often presented as caring parental behavior. Financial dynamics in these fictional families also reveal disturbing truths about power and control. Money becomes a weapon used to maintain dominance hierarchies within the family unit. Characters leverage financial dependency to strip away others' autonomy, creating situations where family members must choose between self-respect and survival. This economic abuse rarely gets labeled as such within the show's context, but it's a form of domestic violence nonetheless. Then there's the normalization of substance abuse as a coping mechanism for family stress. Characters regularly turn to alcohol or other substances to deal with their dysfunctional relationships, and this behavior is consistently portrayed as acceptable or even admirable. The message sent is that chemical numbing is preferable to addressing underlying problems, a philosophy that has destroyed countless real families. The violence, both physical and emotional, that permeates these shows is staggering when you really analyze it. Characters assault each other, destroy property in fits of rage, and engage in psychological warfare that would traumatize actual family members. Yet because it's animated or comedic, we're conditioned to view this violence as harmless fun rather than recognizing it as abusive behavior that mirrors real-world domestic violence patterns. What about the complete absence of healthy conflict resolution in these families? Disagreements escalate to explosive confrontations, problems get swept under the rug rather than addressed, and family members hold grudges that span entire seasons. There's never any genuine communication, compromise, or emotional growth. Instead, conflicts either explode into chaos or get ignored until they fester into something worse. The gender dynamics in these shows often perpetuate harmful stereotypes that reinforce toxic relationship patterns. Male characters are frequently portrayed as bumbling, emotionally unavailable, and incapable of basic actions. Adulting skills. Female characters often become long-suffering martyrs who enable bad behavior while sacrificing their own needs. These portrayals normalize codependency and emotional labor imbalances that plague real relationships. Let's talk about the children in these fictional families, because their treatment is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of all. They're often parentified, forced to take on adult responsibilities while their actual parents remain childlike. They become emotional caretakers for dysfunctional adults, a role reversal that stunts their development and robs them of childhood innocence. The shows present this as maturity or responsibility, but it's actually a form of childhood emotional abuse. The sibling dynamics portrayed are equally problematic, characterized by intense competition, jealousy, and cruelty. Siblings are pitted against each other for parental attention and approval, creating lifelong rivalries rather than supportive bonds. The message conveyed is that family members are competitors rather than allies, fostering an environment where trust and cooperation become impossible. Privacy and personal boundaries are consistently violated in these fictional families. Characters rifle through each other's belongings, eavesdrop on private conversations, and invade personal space without consequence. This normalized boundary violation teaches viewers that family members don't deserve privacy or respect, setting up expectations that healthy relationships cannot meet. The way mental health issues are handled in these shows is particularly troubling. Characters displaying clear signs of depression, anxiety, or other psychological conditions are mocked rather than supported. Their struggles become punchlines rather than opportunities for compassion and understanding. This portrayal stigmatizes mental health challenges and discourages seeking help. Perhaps most disturbing is how these shows handle consequences for toxic behavior. Characters rarely face meaningful repercussions for their harmful actions. They might receive temporary comeuppance, but by the next episode, they're back to their destructive patterns without any real change or growth. This lack of consequences suggests that toxic behavior is acceptable as long as you're family. The enablement that occurs within these family systems is staggering. Instead of holding destructive family members accountable, other characters make excuses, cover up problems, and adapt their own behavior to accommodate dysfunction. This teaches viewers that enabling is loving, and that challenging toxic behavior is disloyal, perspectives that trap people in abusive relationships. Financial irresponsibility is often glorified in these shows, with characters making impulsive decisions that endanger their family's security. Yet there are rarely long-term consequences for these choices, sending the message that financial stability is unimportant and that someone else will always clean up the mess. This attitude contributes to cycles of poverty and instability in real families. The constant chaos and unpredictability in these fictional homes would be traumatic for real children. There's no stability, security, or peace. Instead, children live in environments where they never know what crisis will erupt next, what mood their parents will be in, or whether their basic needs will be met. This chronic stress would cause lasting developmental damage in reality. What's particularly insidious is how these shows use humor to make abuse palatable. When terrible behavior is packaged as comedy, our psychological defenses are lowered. We laugh at situations that should horrify us, gradually becoming desensitized to toxicity. This comedic reframing is a powerful tool that makes dysfunction seem normal and acceptable. The isolation these fictional families experience from healthy outside relationships is another red flag. They rarely maintain friendships or connections with functional people who might challenge their toxic patterns. This isolation prevents reality testing and allows dysfunction to flourish unchecked, much like how abusive relationships cut victims off from support systems. The power dynamics within these families are often rigidly hierarchical and authoritarian rather than collaborative and democratic. Decisions are made by whoever has the most power, regardless of how those decisions affect other family members. This teaches children that relationships are about dominance and submission, rather than mutual respect and partnership. Educational neglect is rampant in these fictional families, with parents showing little interest in their children's learning or development. Academic achievement is either ignored or mocked, extracurricular activities are dismissed as unimportant, and intellectual curiosity is discouraged. This attitude toward education perpetuates cycles of underachievement and limits children's future opportunities. The way these shows handle emotions is deeply problematic. Genuine feelings are ridiculed, emotional expression is punished, and vulnerability is treated as weakness. Family members learn to suppress their authentic selves to survive, creating fake personas while their true needs go unmet. This emotional suppression leads to profound psychological damage over time. Perhaps most tragically, these fictional families never model what healthy relationships actually look like. Viewers, especially children, don't see examples of mutual respect, effective communication, genuine affection, or supportive problem solving. Without these positive models, they lack blueprints for creating healthier relationships in their own lives. The normalization of chaos as family life is perhaps the most damaging message these shows convey. They suggest that dysfunction is inevitable, that all families are messed up, and that toxic behavior is just part of human nature. This fatalistic view prevents people from recognizing that healthy families do exist and that change is possible with effort and commitment. As we wrap up this disturbing journey through the psychology of fictional families, I want you to consider how these portrayals might have influenced your own expectations about family life. Have you normalized behaviors in your own relationships that you wouldn't accept from strangers? Have you laughed off red flags that deserved serious attention? Have you repeated patterns you learned from these shows without questioning their healthiness? The power of media to shape our understanding of normal is immense, and these family shows wield that power irresponsibly. They present dysfunction as entertainment, while failing to acknowledge the real pain such behaviors cause in actual families. By recognizing these patterns, we can begin to break free from toxic blueprints and create healthier relationships. Remember, just because something is common doesn't make it healthy. And just because something makes us laugh doesn't mean it's harmless. Real families deserve better than the chaos and cruelty we've been taught to accept as normal. You deserve better. Your future family deserves better. If this analysis has opened your eyes to patterns in your own life, consider seeking support from mental health professionals who can help you develop healthier relationship skills. Remember that recognizing dysfunction is the first step toward healing, and that breaking cycles of toxicity is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and future generations. What did you think of this deep dive into the dark psychology of fictional families? Did any of these patterns surprise you? Or did they confirm suspicions you already had? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more content that challenges the narratives we've been fed. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and most importantly, stay committed to creating healthier relationships than the ones we see on screen. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the most dysfunctional family on television. Today we're talking about something that's been bothering me for years watching Family Guy. Peter Griffin might be an absolute disaster of a human being, but honestly, his wife Lois has pulled some stunts that would make any reasonable person run straight to a divorce lawyer. I'm talking about moments so outrageous, so completely unforgivable, that you'll be questioning how this marriage even survived. We're counting down the 5 most shocking times Peter should have packed his bags and never looked back. Trust me when I say number 1 is going to blow your mind because it involves a certain pop star and some seriously questionable decisions. But before we jump in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell because we've got tons more Family Guy content coming your way. Let's kick things off with number 5. And honestly, this one still makes me uncomfortable just thinking about it. Picture this. Lois Griffin, the supposedly devoted wife and mother, decides to have an affair with none other than former President Bill Clinton. Yeah, you heard that right. The President of the United States. Now, I know Family Guy is known for its outrageous storylines, but this one crosses every possible line you can imagine. The whole mess starts when Clinton rolls into Quahog for what's supposed to be an innocent beauty contest judging gig. His presidential limo conveniently breaks down right in front of the Griffin house, and suddenly Peter finds himself starstruck by his new famous friend. At first, it seems harmless enough, just 2 guys hanging out causing minor mischief around town. But then Lois discovers Peter looking absolutely terrible the next morning, and she is not having it, especially when she finds out he brought home a random pig from their adventures. Now, here's where any normal person would just have a conversation with their pig spouse about boundaries and responsibility. But Lois Griffin is not normal people. Instead of talking to Peter directly, she marches herself over to Clinton's hotel room to give the former president a piece of her mind about corrupting her husband. Big mistake. And I mean astronomically huge mistake. Because the next thing you know, she's completely fallen for Clinton's legendary charm. The situation goes from bad to absolutely catastrophic when Peter walks in to find his wife in bed with the president. Can you even imagine that moment? The betrayal, the shock, the complete destruction of everything you thought you knew about your marriage. Peter literally catches them in the act, and Lois has the audacity to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness like this is just some minor marital hiccup. But here's the part that really gets me. Instead of demanding answers or showing any kind of backbone, Peter just accepts her pathetic excuse and even agrees to her twisted proposal that he can sleep with anyone he wants to get even. The whole situation is so messed up that even when Peter chooses to get revenge with Lois's own mother, the moral compass of this family is just completely broken. What makes this even worse is that this isn't just about physical betrayal, it's about the complete lack of respect Lois shows for her marriage and family. She throws away decades of marriage for a quick fling with a politician and somehow expects everything to just go back to normal. Any self-respecting person would have walked away right then and there, but not Peter Griffin. Moving on to number 4, and this one might actually be worse, because it involves someone who should be completely off limits. Meg's teenage boyfriend, Anthony. Now, I know what you're thinking. Meg actually managed to get a boyfriend. That's shocking enough on its own, but what Lois does next is absolutely unforgivable and frankly pretty disturbing. Anthony seems like a decent kid, probably the first normal person to show any interest in Meg ever. Peter and Lois are initially thrilled that their daughter finally found someone. But then Anthony makes one innocent compliment about Lois looking like a movie star, and suddenly she's acting like a predator stalking her prey. The whole thing starts innocently enough with Lois just feeling flattered by the attention, but then she completely loses her mind and starts fantasizing about this underage kid. We're talking about a grown woman in her 40s getting worked up over a teenage boy who's dating her own daughter. The levels of wrong here are just astronomical, and it gets so much worse. Lois doesn't just fantasize, she takes action. She literally creates a schedule showing when Peter will be out of the house and when she'll be available. She hands this to a minor, along with details about her personal life that no teenager should ever know about. The predatory behavior is so blatant and disturbing that it's honestly hard to watch. When she finally makes her move and tries to seduce Anthony, the kid is surprisingly into it, which somehow makes the whole situation even more disturbing. But of course, Meg walks in at the worst possible moment and catches her own mother trying to hook up with her boyfriend. The emotional damage this causes to Meg is something that family will probably never recover from. The worst part about this whole scenario is how Lois handles getting caught. Instead of taking responsibility for her completely inappropriate behavior, she manipulates the situation to make herself the victim. She tells Peter that he makes her feel old and ugly, essentially blaming him for her decision to prey on a teenager. And Peter, being the spineless disaster that he is, actually apologizes to her, and the whole thing gets swept under the rug like nothing happened. This right here should have been the end of their marriage. There's no coming back from trying to sleep with your daughter's underage boyfriend. The betrayal of trust. The emotional damage to Meg. The complete breakdown of appropriate boundaries. It's all unforgivable. But somehow, Peter just lets it slide, and life goes on as normal in the Griffin household. Coming in at number 3, we have the time Lois discovered gambling and literally bet away the family car at a casino. This one starts innocently enough, with the family taking a road trip to help Chris with his Boy Scout troubles. Peter, being Peter, refuses to ask for directions, even when they're clearly lost, and the situation gets worse when he needs to make an emergency bathroom stop at a Native American casino. While Peter handles his business, Lois finds herself with some free time, and that's when she spots the poker machines. Now, for most people, this would be a harmless distraction, maybe lose a few dollars and move on with your day. But Lois Griffin has zero impulse control, and within minutes, she's completely hooked on gambling. The addiction happens so fast, it's actually frightening to watch. One minute she's just curious about the flashing lights and sounds, the next minute she's feeding money into these machines like her life depends on it. Peter literally has to drag her away from the gambling floor when it's time to leave, but the damage is already done. Lois has caught the gambling bug, and it's about to destroy everything. Here's where the story goes from concerning to absolutely insane. While Peter is distracted, Lois manages to lose the family car in a poker game. She literally gambles away their primary means of transportation, stranding the entire family at a casino in the middle of nowhere. The level of irresponsibility and selfishness it takes to make that kind of decision is just staggering. Peter ends up having to pretend to be Native American and spend a night hungry in the forest just to win back their car through some ridiculous tribal challenge. The fact that he actually pulls this off is a miracle, but that doesn't excuse what Lois did. She put her entire family at risk because she couldn't control herself around some flashing lights and the sound of coins dropping. The gambling addiction reveals something really dark about Lois's character. She's willing to sacrifice her family's security and well-being for the temporary thrill of potentially winning money. This isn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. It's a fundamental character flaw that shows she can't be trusted with important decisions. Any reasonable person would have serious doubts about continuing a marriage with someone who would gamble away the family car on a whim. What makes this even more frustrating is that there are no real consequences for Lois's actions. Peter saves the day, gets the car back, and they all go home like nothing happened. There's no discussion about gambling addiction, no acknowledgement of how her behavior could have left them stranded, no recognition that this kind of impulse control problem might be a serious issue in their marriage. Now we're getting to the really disturbing stuff, with number 2, where Lois reads one book about minimalism and completely loses her mind in the most destructive way possible. This episode perfectly captures how Lois tends to take any new idea and push it to absolutely insane extremes without any regard for how it affects her family. The whole disaster starts when Lois discovers a book about decluttering and minimalism. The basic concept is pretty reasonable: getting rid of unnecessary stuff to focus on what truly brings you joy. Most people would maybe clean out a closet or donate some old clothes, but not Lois Griffin. She decides that minimalism means literally throwing away everything and everyone in her life that doesn't spark immediate happiness. The author of this minimalism book claims to have learned these revolutionary insights by meditating on a bridge in Asia, which should have been a red flag that this isn't exactly scientific advice. But Lois is so desperate to find meaning in her life that she latches onto this philosophy like it's going to solve all her problems. What starts as organizing and decluttering quickly escalates to Lois throwing away family belongings without permission. She's making unilateral decisions about what brings the family joy completely ignoring everyone else's feelings and attachments to their possessions. The lack of consideration for her family's feelings and the authoritarian way she starts controlling everyone's lives is just incredibly toxic. But then Lois takes it to the ultimate extreme and decides that her own family doesn't bring her enough joy, so she kicks them out of the house. Peter, Chris, Meg, Brian, and Stewie all end up living in a storage unit while Lois enjoys her empty minimalist paradise. Can you imagine throwing your own children out of their home because a self-help book told you to focus on joy? This is abandonment of the highest order. The situation gets even more surreal when Lois decides that she herself is clutter and needs to be thrown away. She literally abandons her family completely, leaving behind only a vague note before disappearing entirely. Her husband and children have no idea where she is or if she's even alive. This level of selfish behavior goes way beyond any normal marital problems. It takes Lois falling into an actual garbage barge and nearly drowning in trash for her to realize that maybe throwing away your entire family wasn't the brilliant idea she thought it was. She comes back home babbling about how garbage is wonderful and everything is garbage, which doesn't exactly inspire confidence that she's learned anything meaningful from this experience. The fact that Peter just welcomes her back after she abandoned the entire family shows an incredible lack of self-respect. Lois literally threw away her marriage and her children because a book told her to focus on joy, and somehow that's just something they all move past, like it was a minor disagreement about dinner plans. Finally, we reach number 1, and this is the most disturbing example of all. Lois has a midlife crisis meltdown and ends up trying to seduce Justin Bieber, who at the time was clearly underage. This isn't just inappropriate behavior, this is straight-up predatory and potentially criminal activity. The whole nightmare begins when Lois is feeling down about getting older, and Peter makes everything worse by reading her a birthday poem that basically lists all the ways she's aged and become less attractive. Now, granted, Peter's poem is incredibly insensitive and hurtful, but that doesn't justify what Lois does next. Instead of having an adult conversation about feeling unappreciated, or seeking therapy, or literally any other healthy coping mechanism, Lois decides to have a complete psychological breakdown. She starts dressing like a teenager and acting like she's in high school again, which is already embarrassing enough for a middle-aged mother. But then, things take a turn into seriously illegal territory. When Justin Bieber comes to town, and Lois becomes obsessed with meeting him. She shows up at his concert acting like a screaming teenage fan, which is cringe-worthy enough when you're watching a grown woman embarrass herself on live television while her family watches in horror. The situation reaches peak disturbing when Lois actually tracks down Bieber's dressing room and tries to seduce him. She bribes a security guard, gets into his private area, and starts making advances on someone who is clearly a minor. The power dynamic here is incredibly disturbing, an adult woman using her age and experience to manipulate a teenage celebrity. When she tells this underage kid to take his pants off, that's when this crosses the line from inappropriate into potentially criminal behavior. This isn't just a midlife crisis. This is predatory behavior that would absolutely result in criminal charges if this happened in real life. The fact that Peter shows up just in time to stop anything from happening doesn't excuse what Lois was attempting to do. What makes this even more infuriating is how the episode handles the aftermath. Peter and Lois have a heart-to-heart conversation where they both admit to having insecurities, and suddenly everything is forgiven. There's no acknowledgement that Lois literally tried to commit a felony or that her behavior was completely unacceptable under any circumstances. This pattern of behavior throughout all these episodes shows that Lois Griffin is fundamentally selfish, manipulative, and completely unable to take responsibility for her actions. Whether she's cheating with presidents, gambling away family property, abandoning her children, or attempting to seduce minors, she always finds a way to make herself the victim and avoid any real consequences. Peter Griffin might be an idiot, but he deserves better than a wife who consistently betrays their marriage vows, endangers their family, and commits potentially criminal acts whenever she feels a little bit unhappy with her life. Any of these incidents individually would be grounds for divorce, but all of them together paint a picture of someone who is completely unfit to be a wife and mother. The most frustrating part is that Family Guy treats all of this like it's just harmless comedy, when in reality, these behaviors would destroy any real family. Lois Griffin represents the worst possible partner. Someone who takes no responsibility, lies, manipulates, and puts her own selfish desires above the safety and well-being of her family. So there you have it, folks. 5 times when Peter Griffin should have absolutely divorced Lois and never looked back. From presidential affairs to attempted felonies, this woman has done things that would end any normal marriage immediately. Let me know in the comments which one of these shocked you the most, and whether you think there are any other Lois moments that deserve to be on this list. Don't forget to smash that like button if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Griffin family dysfunction, and subscribe for more Family Guy content. We've got tons more episodes to break down, and trust me, there's no shortage of material when it comes to this completely insane cartoon family. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m., desperately trying to fall asleep, but your brain just won't shut off. You need something familiar, something comforting, something that won't keep you wide awake analyzing plot twists. Enter Family Guy, the animated sitcom that's somehow become the internet's unofficial lullaby. Tonight, we're diving into the most relaxing Family Guy facts that'll have you drifting off to dreamland faster than Peter Griffin running from a giant chicken. But first, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why millions of people choose Family Guy as their go-to sleep show? It's not just you. There's actually a whole community of people who can't sleep without hearing the familiar voices of the Griffin family playing softly in the background. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this chaotic animated family has become the world's most unlikely sleep aid. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Family Guy wasn't supposed to be a bedtime show at all. When Seth MacFarlane first pitched the series back in the late 1992, he envisioned it as appointment television, something families would gather around to watch together on Sunday nights. The irony is beautiful when you think about it. A show designed to grab your attention and keep you glued to the screen has somehow evolved into the perfect background noise for drifting off to sleep. The science behind this phenomenon is actually fascinating. Sleep experts call it the familiar stimulation effect. Your brain craves just enough stimulation to distract it from the day's worries, but not so much that it becomes fully engaged. Family Guy hits this sweet spot perfectly. The episodes follow predictable patterns that your subconscious mind finds comforting, while the humor provides just enough entertainment to quiet those racing thoughts that keep you awake. Here's something that'll blow your mind. The average Family Guy episode contains approximately 847 individual animation cells. That's nearly 850 hand-drawn images flowing together to create just 22 minutes of content. When you're lying there with your eyes closed, your brain isn't processing these visuals, but it's still registering the consistent rhythm of the animation. This creates a subtle, almost hypnotic effect that naturally slows your heart rate and prepares your body for sleep. Speaking of rhythm, let's talk about those famous cutaway gags. You know, those seemingly random flashbacks that interrupt the main story. Remember that time when has become one of the most recognizable phrases in television history. But here's what makes them perfect for sleep. They're completely self-contained. You don't need to follow a complex storyline or remember plot details from previous episodes. Each cutaway is like a tiny, standalone story that your drowsy brain can process without effort. The voice actors themselves have become part of WWWWW, this sleep ritual for millions of viewers. Seth MacFarlane voices not just Peter Griffin, but also Brian the dog, Stewie the baby, and Glenn Quagmire. His vocal range is so distinctive that your brain immediately recognizes these characters even when you're half asleep. It's like having a familiar friend telling you bedtime stories, except these friends happen to be a talking dog with a martini problem and a baby bent on world domination. Here's a delightful fact that'll make you smile as you drift off. The character of Brian Griffin was originally going to be much more dog-like in the early concept stages. MacFarlane wanted him to occasionally chase cars and bark at mailmen. But as the character developed, Brian evolved into the most human-like member of the family, often serving as the voice of reason among all the chaos. This evolution created the perfect sleep companion, A character whose calm, measured voice could anchor you when the show got too zany. The show's music deserves special recognition in the sleep department. Composer Ron Jones and later David Zippel created soundtracks that perfectly complement the show's mood without being jarring or overstimulating. The background music flows seamlessly from scene to scene, creating an audio landscape that's engaging enough to hold your attention, but gentle enough to let you relax. It's like having a personal soundtrack to your journey into dreamland. Let's dive into something truly remarkable about the show's production that makes it ideal for repeated viewing, which is essential for a good sleep show. Each episode takes approximately 8 months to produce, from initial script to final animation. This lengthy process allows for incredible attention to detail that rewards both active and passive viewing. When you're actively watching, you catch visual gags and subtle references. When you're falling asleep, your brain picks up on the consistency and craftsmanship without you even realizing it. The character development over the years has created something like a comfortable old sweater for viewers. Peter Griffin's predictable unpredictability, Lois's patient exasperation, Chris's awkward teenage energy, Meg's perpetual search for acceptance, Stewie's sophisticated vocabulary wrapped in a baby's body, and Brian's intellectual pretensions all combine to create a family dynamic that feels familiar, even when the situations are completely absurd. Here's something that makes Family Guy uniquely suited for sleepwatching. The show operates on what comedy writers call escalating absurdity. Each scene builds on the previous one, but not in a way that requires intense concentration. Instead, the absurdity creates a dreamlike quality that mirrors the way your mind naturally drifts as you fall asleep. Your thoughts become increasingly disconnected and surreal, just like a typical Family Guy episode. The cultural references in Family Guy span decades, from 1,950 seconds television shows to contemporary internet memes. This creates a comforting sense of shared cultural knowledge. Even if you don't get every reference, your brain recognizes the patterns and rhythms of pop culture commentary. It's like being wrapped in a blanket made of collective memories, which is incredibly soothing when you're trying to wind down for the night. One of the most sleep-friendly aspects of Family Guy is its episodic nature. Unlike serialized dramas, where missing an episode means losing crucial plot developments, Family Guy resets after each episode. The Griffin family ends each adventure more or less where they started, which means you can drop in and out of episodes without feeling lost. This removes the anxiety of needing to pay attention, freeing your mind to relax and drift away. The show's approach to time and logic is wonderfully elastic, which mirrors how our minds work during the transition to sleep. In Family Guy, characters can travel through time, alternate dimensions, or simply exist in different versions of reality within the same episode. This flexible relationship with continuity creates a dreamlike atmosphere where anything is possible, but nothing really matters, perfectly matching the mental state you want to achieve before sleep. Let's talk about the genius of Stewie Griffin's character development as a sleep aid. Initially conceived as a villain bent on matricide, Stewie evolved into something much more complex and, frankly, more soothing. His relationship with Brian, particularly in their Road 2 episodes, creates some of the show's most heartwarming moments. These episodes often feature extended conversations between the baby and the dog as they navigate various adventures together. The steady dialogue and genuine friendship between these characters provides the perfect auditory backdrop for falling asleep. The animation style itself contributes to the show's sleep-inducing qualities. The character designs are simple and clean, with bold colors and clear lines that don't strain the eyes during those moments when you're peeking at the screen. The movements are fluid but not hyperkinetic, creating a visual rhythm that's more lulling than stimulating. Even the explosions and action sequences maintain a cartoon quality that feels safe and non-threatening. Here's a fascinating production detail that affects how the show functions as a sleep aid. The dialogue is recorded first. Then the animation is created to match the voice performances. This process, called prelay, means that the timing and rhythm of every line delivery is precisely crafted before any visuals are created. The result is incredibly natural-sounding dialogue that flows like real conversation, making it easy for your brain to process even when you're not fully conscious. The show's handling of music and sound effects is particularly sleep-friendly. Unlike action movies or dramas that use sudden loud noises to create tension, Family Guy maintains relatively consistent audio levels throughout each episode. The sound mixing is designed for television broadcast, which means it's optimized for consistent volume levels that won't jolt you awake with unexpected loud moments. Family Guy's relationship with its own absurdity creates what psychologists call cognitive ease. When a show acknowledges its own ridiculousness, it removes the mental effort required to make sense of what you're watching. You don't need to analyze character motivations or predict plot developments because the show itself admits that logic isn't the point. This cognitive ease is incredibly valuable when you're trying to turn off your analytical mind and prepare for sleep. The recurring characters and settings in Family Guy create a sense of home that's perfect for bedtime viewing. The Griffin House, the Drunken Clam Bar, Quahog's various locations, NS. These places become as familiar as your own neighborhood. This familiarity triggers a psychological response, similar to being in Arn, your childhood bedroom, creating feelings of safety and comfort that naturally promote sleep. One of the most overlooked aspects of Family Guy's sleepworthiness is its emotional consistency. While the situations are wildly unpredictable, the emotional core of the show remains stable. Peter loves his family despite being selfish and immature. Lois tries to hold everything together while maintaining her own identity. The kids navigate growing up with parents who are essentially overgrown children themselves. These emotional truths provide an anchor of stability beneath all the chaos. The show's use of cultural nostalgia taps into what researchers call nostalgic reverie, a mental state that naturally promotes relaxation and positive feelings. Whether it's referencing classic movies, old television shows, or bygone eras, Family Guy constantly evokes the warm feelings associated with remembering better times. This nostalgic quality makes the show feel like comfort food for your brain. Here's something remarkable about the show's longevity that contributes to its effectiveness as a sleep aid. With over 400 episodes spanning more than 2 decades, Family Guy offers an enormous library of content that you can cycle through without repetition becoming boring. The sheer volume of episodes means you can watch for months without seeing the same episode twice, but the consistent formula means every episode feels familiar enough to be comforting. The character of Glenn Quagmire, despite his often problematic behavior, serves an important function in the show's sleep ecosystem. His predictable catchphrases and exaggerated personality traits create audio cues that your brain recognizes instantly. When you hear giggity, your subconscious knows exactly where you are in the Family Guy universe, providing a sense of orientation even when you're barely conscious. The show's approach to violence and conflict is uniquely suited for bedtime viewing. Unlike realistic dramas where violence has consequences and emotional weight, Family Guy treats physical comedy like old-school cartoons. Characters can be blown up, flattened, or injured in spectacular ways, but they always bounce back without lasting harm. This removes the stress and anxiety that realistic violence might create when you're trying to relax. Family Guy's relationship with its own timeline creates a dreamlike quality that mirrors how memories work during sleep. Characters reference events that may or may not have happened in previous episodes, and the show's continuity is deliberately loose and inconsistent. This mirrors how your brain processes information during sleep, connecting random memories and experiences in ways that don't always make logical sense. The writing style of Family Guy incorporates what comedy experts call stream of consciousness humor. Jokes flow into each other through loose associations rather than rigid logical connections. This style mimics the way thoughts naturally drift when you're falling asleep, making it easy for your mind to follow along without requiring focused attention. One often overlooked element that makes Family Guy perfect for sleep is its treatment of time within episodes. Unlike shows that maintain strict chronological order, Family Guy freely jumps between past, present, and future, often within the same scene. This fluid relationship with time removes the pressure to follow a linear narrative, allowing your mind to drift in and out of attention without losing track of what's happening. The show's ensemble cast creates multiple entry points for your attention throughout each episode. If Peter's storyline doesn't hold your interest, Stewie and Brian might be having an intriguing conversation. If the main plot becomes too energetic, there's usually a quieter subplot running in parallel. This variety ensures that there's always something appropriate for whatever level of consciousness you're experiencing. The color palette used in Family Guy is specifically designed to be easy on the eyes. The bright, primary colors are bold enough to be visible in low-light conditions, but not so intense that they're overstimulating. The backgrounds use muted tones that don't compete with the character animation, creating a visual environment that's engaging but not exhausting. Here's a production secret that affects how the show works as a sleep aid. The recording sessions for Family Guy often involve the voice actors improvising and riffing off each other, creating natural conversational rhythms that aren't always present in more scripted shows. These improvisational moments add an organic quality to the dialogue that makes it feel like overhearing real conversations, which is inherently soothing. The show's use of callback humor creates what psychologists call recognition pleasure, the satisfaction of understanding references to previous episodes or jokes. This creates a reward system for regular viewers that doesn't require intense concentration. Even when you're half asleep, your brain still experiences the mild pleasure of recognizing familiar references, reinforcing positive associations with the viewing experience. Family Guy's approach to celebrity impressions and parodies provides another layer of comfort for sleepy viewers. The impressions are usually exaggerated enough to be immediately recognizable, but not so precise that they require focused attention to appreciate. Whether it's a parody of a famous movie scene or an impression of a well-known celebrity, these elements provide familiar touchstones that help anchor your drifting attention. The show's treatment of its own mistakes and inconsistencies is refreshingly honest and, paradoxically, quite soothing. Characters occasionally break the fourth wall to acknowledge plot holes or continuity errors, which removes any pressure you might feel to make sense of everything you're seeing. This meta-humor creates a sense that you're in on the joke, fostering a feeling of inclusion and comfort. The pacing of Family Guy episodes is carefully designed to maintain interest without creating urgency. Unlike action shows that use rapid cuts and escalating tension to keep viewers engaged, Family Guy uses a more relaxed rhythm that allows for natural breathing room between jokes and plot developments. This pacing aligns well with the slowing brain activity that occurs as you transition towards sleep. One final thought as we wind down together. The true genius of Family Guy as a sleep aid lies in its fundamental paradox. It's a show about a dysfunctional family that somehow makes you feel like part of a functional one. Despite all their flaws, fights, and ridiculous adventures, the Griffin family always comes back together. They forgive each other's mistakes, support each other through crises, and maintain their bonds despite everything that tries to tear them apart. This underlying message of unconditional family love, buried beneath layers of irreverent humor and chaotic plotting, provides the emotional foundation that makes Family Guy so comforting. When you're lying in bed, vulnerable and preparing to surrender consciousness for several hours, there's something deeply reassuring about spending time with a family that, despite everything, genuinely cares about each other. So tonight, as you settle in with another episode of Family Guy playing softly in the background, remember that you're not just watching a cartoon. You're participating in a ritual shared by millions of people around the world who have discovered that sometimes the best way to fall asleep is to spend time with the Griffin family. Sweet dreams, and don't forget to set your sleep timer.
Have you ever wondered what secrets lurk behind one of television's most controversial animated series? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and sometimes shocking world of Family Guy, with facts so fascinating they might just help you drift off to sleep. But trust me, you'll want to stay awake for these incredible revelations about Seth MacFarlane's groundbreaking creation. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator named Seth MacFarlane is sitting in his tiny apartment, sketching out what would become one of the most polarizing shows in television history. Little did he know that his crude drawings of a dysfunctional Rhode Island family would spawn over 2 decades of entertainment, controversy, and cultural impact that continues to this day. Family Guy didn't just stumble into existence by accident. The show's origin story is actually rooted in McFarlane's college thesis project at the Rhode Island School of Design. Back in 1995, he created a short film called The Life of Larry, featuring a middle-aged man named Larry and his talking dog. This 9-minute animated short caught the attention of television executives and eventually evolved into the Family Guy we know today. What's remarkable is that many of the core elements from that original student film made it directly into the series, proving that sometimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected places. The casting process for Family Guy reveals some truly surprising facts that most fans never discover. Seth MacFarlane himself voices not just one, but 4 major characters in the show. He's the voice behind Peter Griffin, Brian the dog, Stewie Griffin, and Glenn Quagmire. What's even more impressive is that MacFarlane can seamlessly switch between these vastly different vocal personalities during recording sessions, often having entire conversations with himself as different characters. The other voice actors frequently joke that they feel like they're working with a one-man show, since MacFarlane essentially carries the comedic weight of multiple personalities. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, actually wasn't the original choice for the character. The role was initially offered to Lacey Chabert, who you might recognize from Mean Girls and Party of 5. Chabert did voice Meg Griffin in the early seasons, but scheduling conflicts led to her departure, and Mila Kunis stepped in to take over. Meanwhile, Borstein had been working as a writer and consultant on the show before landing the role of Lois, making her transition to voice acting feel completely natural. The show's animation style might look simple, but there's incredible complexity hidden beneath those seemingly basic character designs. Each episode of Family Guy requires approximately 8 months to complete from initial script to final broadcast. The animation process involves hundreds of artists, animators, and technicians working across multiple studios. What's particularly fascinating is that the show uses a hybrid approach, combining traditional hand-drawn animation with computer-generated elements. Those elaborate fight scenes and musical numbers that fans love so much often require specialized animation techniques that push the boundaries of television production budgets. Speaking of production, Family Guy has one of the most unusual writing rooms in television. The writer's room operates more like a comedy club than a traditional television writing environment. Writers are encouraged to pitch their wildest, most outrageous ideas without any filters. Many of the show's most memorable cutaway gags actually come from spontaneous brainstorming sessions where writers try to one-up each other with increasingly absurd scenarios. The famous "Bird is the Word" episode, for example, originated from a writer casually mentioning the old Trashmen song, which then spiraled into an entire episode concept within hours. The show's relationship with censorship and network standards has created some legendary behind-the-scenes stories. During its early years on Fox, Family Guy constantly pushed against network restrictions, leading to numerous battles over content. Some episodes were heavily edited or had entire segments removed before airing. Interestingly, when the show moved to Adult Swim and later back to Fox with renewed popularity, many of these previously censored segments were restored in DVD releases and streaming versions, giving fans access to the creator's original, uncensored vision. Family Guy's cancellation and resurrection story reads like something out of a Hollywood fairy tale. After 3 seasons, Fox canceled the show in 2002 due to declining ratings. However, something unprecedented happened. DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns created a massive surge in popularity. Fans organized campaigns, online petitions gained hundreds of thousands of signatures, and merchandise sales skyrocketed. This grassroots movement convinced Fox to revive the series in 2005, making Family Guy one of the first shows in television history to be brought back to life primarily due to fan demand and home video success. The show's cultural impact extends far beyond television screens. Family Guy has influenced internet culture in ways that most people don't realize. Many popular memes and viral video formats can trace their origins back to Family Guy episodes. The show's cutaway gag structure has become a template for online content creators, and phrases like "freakin' sweet" and "giggity giggity" have entered everyday vocabulary. Social media platforms are filled with Family Guy reaction GIFs and quotes, demonstrating the show's lasting influence on digital communication. Seth MacFarlane's musical background plays a crucial role in Family Guy's identity that often goes unnoticed. MacFarlane is an accomplished jazz singer and pianist who has released several albums and performed with major orchestras. This musical talent directly influences the show's frequent musical numbers and elaborate song and dance sequences. When characters break into song, MacFarlane often personally composes the music and provides vocal arrangements. Some of the show's most memorable moments, like Stewie and Brian's road trip songs or Peter's various musical adventures, showcase MacFarlane's genuine musical abilities rather than just comedy writing. The voice recording process for Family Guy involves some truly unique techniques that create the show's distinctive sound. Unlike many animated series where actors record their lines separately, Family Guy often brings the core cast together for group recording sessions. This allows for more natural interactions and improvised moments between characters. Seth Green, who voices Chris Griffin, frequently ad-libs during these sessions, leading to some of the characters' most endearing moments. The chemistry between voice actors during these collaborative recording sessions contributes significantly to the family dynamic that makes the show feel authentic despite its outrageous scenarios. Family Guy's international variations reveal fascinating cultural adaptations that most American viewers never see. Different countries have created their own localized versions of certain episodes, replacing American pop culture references with local celebrities and cultural touchstones. The show airs in over 50 countries, and each region has unique censorship requirements that lead to different editing approaches. Some countries focus heavily on removing violence while allowing sexual content, while others take the opposite approach. These international versions sometimes create entirely different comedic rhythms and viewing experiences. The show's relationship with guest stars has produced some incredible behind-the-scenes stories. Many celebrities who appear on Family Guy are longtime fans who specifically request to be part of episodes. Conway Twitty, whose music videos frequently interrupt episodes as random cutaway gags, became a running joke specifically because MacFarlane and the writers found his earnest country music performances hilariously incongruous with the show's irreverent tone. Some guest stars have recorded multiple episodes worth of material during single recording sessions, allowing the show to feature their characters across multiple seasons. Family Guy's approach to controversial topics has created a unique position in television comedy. The show operates under what writers call the equal opportunity offense philosophy, meaning that no topic, group, or individual is considered off-limits for comedic treatment. This approach has generated both criticism and praise from various quarters, but it has also allowed the show to address social issues in ways that more conventional programming cannot. Episodes dealing with topics like religion, politics, and social justice often use humor as a vehicle for presenting multiple perspectives on complex issues. The technical aspects of Family Guy's production reveal impressive attention to detail that viewers might not notice. The show's color palette has evolved significantly over its run, with newer episodes featuring more sophisticated lighting and shading techniques. Background artists create incredibly detailed environments that often include visual jokes and Easter eggs that reward careful viewers. The Drunken Clam, the Griffin House, and other recurring locations contain hundreds of small details that remain consistent across episodes, creating a lived-in feel that supports the show's fictional world. Family Guy's impact on other animated series cannot be overstated. The show's success paved the way for adult-oriented animated comedies like American Dad, The Cleveland Show, and Rick and Morty. Its influence on writing style, particularly the use of non-sequitur cutaway gags and pop culture references, has become a standard template for animated comedy. Many current animated series creators cite Family Guy as a direct influence on their own work, demonstrating its lasting impact on the medium. The show's merchandise empire extends into surprisingly diverse areas. Beyond typical television show merchandise like t-shirts and toys, Family Guy has inspired everything from mobile apps to theme park attractions. The show's characters appear on products ranging from breakfast cereals to automobile accessories. This merchandising success has contributed significantly to the show's financial viability and cultural presence, making Family Guy characters recognizable, even to people who don't regularly watch the series. Family Guy's writing team includes some of television's most talented comedy writers, many of whom have gone on to create their own successful series. The show serves as a training ground for comedy writers, providing them with experience in rapid-fire joke writing, character development, and serialized storytelling. Alumni of the Family Guy writing staff have contributed to shows like The Simpsons, South Park, and Saturday Night Live, spreading the show's comedic influence throughout the industry. The show's approach to character development over multiple seasons reveals sophisticated long-term storytelling strategies. While Family Guy is known for its episodic nature and reset-button storytelling, careful viewers can trace character evolution across seasons. Stewie's gradual shift from world domination fantasies to more nuanced character interactions, Brian's ongoing struggles with alcoholism and romantic relationships, and Peter's various career changes all represent subtle character development that occurs alongside the show's more obvious comedic elements. Family Guy's relationship with current events and topical humor requires incredibly fast production turnarounds that most viewers don't appreciate. The show's writers and animators often work under extreme time pressure to incorporate recent news events and pop culture phenomena into episodes. This rapid response capability has allowed Family Guy to remain culturally relevant across multiple decades, but it also creates significant production challenges that require careful coordination between writing, animation, and broadcast scheduling. The show's musical parodies and elaborate musical sequences often involve complex licensing negotiations and legal considerations. When Family Guy parodies specific songs or musical styles, the production team must navigate copyright laws while creating content that's clearly transformative enough to qualify for fair use protection. Some of the show's most memorable musical moments required months of legal work behind the scenes, demonstrating the complexity involved in creating seemingly simple comedic content. Family Guy's impact on voice acting as a profession has been substantial and lasting. The show's success has elevated voice acting from a relatively niche specialty to a more mainstream entertainment career path. Seth MacFarlane's multiple voice roles have inspired other actors to develop versatile vocal capabilities, and the show's ensemble cast approach has become a model for other animated series. Voice acting workshops and training programs now regularly reference Family Guy techniques and approaches. The show's digital presence and streaming availability have introduced Family Guy to entirely new generations of viewers who experience the series differently than original broadcast audiences. Binge-watching capabilities allow viewers to notice long-term character arcs and recurring jokes that might be missed during weekly viewing. Streaming platforms have also made international versions and extended cuts available to broader audiences, creating new ways to experience familiar content. Family Guy's influence on comedy writing extends beyond animation into live-action television and film. The show's rapid-fire reference style and willingness to break the fourth wall have influenced writers across multiple mediums. Comedy Central roasts, Saturday Night Live sketches, and even stand-up comedy routines now regularly employ techniques that were pioneered or popularized by Family Guy writers. The show's approach to holiday episodes and special events demonstrates sophisticated audience engagement strategies. Family Guy's Christmas, Halloween, and other holiday episodes often feature elaborate production values and guest stars, creating appointment television that generates significant viewer loyalty. These special episodes frequently become fan favorites that get rewatched annually, contributing to the show's lasting cultural presence. As we reach the end of our journey through these fascinating Family Guy facts, it's clear that this seemingly simple animated series contains layers of complexity, creativity, and cultural influence that most viewers never fully appreciate. From Seth MacFarlane's one-man vocal circus to the show's groundbreaking approach to adult animation, Family Guy has carved out a unique space in television history that continues to evolve and surprise audiences. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone just discovering the series, these behind-the-scenes insights reveal the incredible amount of talent, dedication, and creative risk-taking that goes into every episode. The show's ability to remain relevant and controversial after more than 2 decades speaks to its creators' understanding of comedy, culture, and the ever-changing landscape of entertainment. So the next time you're settling in for a Family Guy marathon, remember that you're not just watching a cartoon about a dysfunctional family in Rhode Island. You're experiencing the result of thousands of hours of creative work by some of the most talented people in entertainment, all coming together to create something that's simultaneously ridiculous and profound, offensive and heartwarming, simple and incredibly sophisticated. Sweet dreams. And remember, somewhere out there, Seth MacFarlane is probably already working on the next episode that will surprise, delight, and possibly outrage audiences all over again. That's the magic of Family Guy. And that's what makes it truly special in the vast landscape of television entertainment. Get comfortable, close your eyes, and let me take you on a gentle journey through the surprisingly deep world of Family Guy. Tonight, we're going to explore the hidden layers, the forgotten stories, and the intricate details that make up one of television's most enduring animated series. This isn't your typical Family Guy experience filled with cutaway gags and rapid-fire jokes. Instead, we're diving into the quieter side of Quahog, where stories unfold slowly and mysteries reveal themselves like pages in a well-worn book. Picture yourself settling into the most comfortable spot in your home, perhaps the same way Peter Griffin settles into his beloved chair at the Drunken Clam. The familiar weight of routine, the comfort of knowing exactly where everything belongs, and the gentle rhythm of a world that somehow makes sense despite all its chaos. That's where we're going tonight, into the heart of what makes Family Guy more than just a comedy show. Let's begin our journey in the early days, back when Family Guy was just a spark of an idea in Seth MacFarlane's imagination. The year was 1995, and MacFarlane was a young animator fresh out of the Rhode Island School of Design. He created a short film called The Life of Larry, featuring a character who would eventually become Peter Griffin. But Larry was different from Peter in subtle ways that tell us something important about how stories evolve and grow over time. In those earliest concepts, the family dynamics were softer, more grounded in reality. The humor came from observation rather than spectacle. MacFarlane was drawing from his own experiences growing up in Connecticut, watching how families really interacted when no one was performing for an audience. The quiet moments between the big events, the small conversations that happen in kitchens and living rooms when the day is winding down. The Griffin house itself tells a story that many people overlook. Located at 31 Spooner Street in Quahog, Rhode Island, this fictional address represents something deeper than just a setting for comedy. The house is modest, middle class, lived in. The wallpaper is slightly dated. The furniture shows signs of daily use, and there's always something slightly askew that suggests real people live here, not television characters. If you've ever noticed the way light filters through the Griffin living room windows during different episodes, you'll see that the animators pay careful attention to time of day and season. Morning light has a different quality than evening light, and winter episodes show the subtle blue-gray tones that anyone who's lived in New England recognizes immediately. These details create a sense of place that goes beyond the jokes, grounding the fantastic elements in something real and familiar. Peter Griffin himself is often dismissed as simply a loud, obnoxious character designed for easy laughs. But when you look closer, when you pay attention to the quieter moments, you see something more complex. Peter represents the struggle of many middle-aged men who feel caught between the expectations of adulthood and the desire to remain young at heart. His job at the brewery, his friendship with his co-workers, his genuine love for his family despite his obvious flaws. These elements create a character who is both ridiculous and surprisingly human. Consider Peter's relationship with his father-in-law, Francis Griffin. Their conflicts aren't just about comedy. They represent a clash between generations, between different ways of seeing the world. Francis, with his strict religious views and rigid moral code, represents an older America, while Peter embodies a more casual, irreverent approach to life. Their arguments, when you strip away the exaggerated elements, echo conversations happening in living rooms across the country. Lois Griffin, too, is more than she initially appears. Her background as a member of the wealthy Pewter-Schmidt family adds layers to her character that aren't always front and center. She chose to marry Peter, chose the middle-class life, chose to prioritize family over the privilege she grew up with. This choice reverberates through many episodes in subtle ways, informing her reactions to situations and her approach to problems. The way Lois handles the chaos that constantly surrounds her family reveals a kind of quiet strength. She's the anchor that keeps the Griffin household from completely spinning out of control. Watch her in the background of scenes sometime, and you'll notice how she's always doing something. Cleaning up a mess, preparing a meal, mediating a conflict. She's the invisible infrastructure that makes the visible comedy possible. Brian Griffin presents perhaps the most interesting character study in the entire series. An anthropomorphic dog who writes novels, drinks martinis, and engages in philosophical discussions, Brian serves as both the family's voice of reason and its most pretentious member. But his character represents something deeper about the struggle between artistic ambition and practical reality. Brian's novels never get published, his political activism rarely accomplishes anything concrete, and his romantic relationships consistently fail. Yet he continues trying, continues believing that his next project will be the one that breaks through. This persistence in the face of repeated failure makes him oddly admirable, even when his intellectual posturing becomes insufferable. He represents the part of all of us that refuses to give up on our dreams, even when evidence suggests we probably should. The relationship between Brian and Stewie has evolved over the years into something genuinely touching. What started as a simple premise, a sophisticated baby and an intellectual dog, has become a friendship between two characters who recognize something of themselves in each other. They're both outsiders in their own family, both struggling with identity and purpose, both searching for meaning in a world that often seems meaningless. Stewie Griffin, the evil genius baby, carries perhaps the heaviest burden of any character in the show. His advanced intelligence, trapped in an infant's body, creates a kind of existential prison. He understands the world around him better than most adults, but he's powerless to change his circumstances. This fundamental frustration drives much of his behavior, from his elaborate schemes to his constant threats of matricide. But Stewie's character has softened over the years, revealing vulnerability beneath the villainy. His relationship with his mother has evolved from antagonistic to genuinely affectionate. His sexuality, hinted at but never explicitly confirmed, adds another layer of complexity to a character who already struggles with identity and belonging. Stewie represents the pain of being misunderstood, of having thoughts and feelings that the world isn't ready to accept. Meg Griffin occupies a unique position in the Family Guy universe as the perpetual outsider. While the treatment she receives from her family is often cruel beyond what real families would tolerate, her character represents something painfully real about adolescence. The feeling of being invisible, unwanted, fundamentally flawed in ways that everyone else can see, but you can't fix. The running joke of everyone hating Meg becomes less funny when you consider what it might feel like to be her. High school is difficult enough without your own family treating you as an embarrassment. Yet Meg persists, continues hoping for acceptance, continues trying to find her place in the world. Her resilience, rarely acknowledged within the show itself, is actually quite remarkable. Chris Griffin, the gentle giant of the family, provides a different perspective on teenage life. While Meg struggles with social rejection, Chris seems largely oblivious to social hierarchies. His innocence, while sometimes played for laughs, also serves as a reminder of what we lose as we grow older and become more aware of how cruel the world can be. The supporting characters of Quahog create a rich tapestry of small-town life. Glenn Quagmire, the sex-obsessed neighbor, represents unchecked desire and the consequences of living without moral boundaries. Cleveland Brown, before his move to Virginia, served as Peter's most loyal friend, the voice of reason who was usually ignored but never gave up trying to help. Joe Swanson, the wheelchair-bound police officer, demonstrates how disability doesn't define a person's worth or capabilities. His enthusiasm for life, his dedication to his job, and his fierce competitiveness in sports show a character who refuses to be limited by his circumstances. Joe's presence in the show normalizes disability in a way that's both respectful and matter-of-fact. The Drunken Clam, Quahog's local bar, serves as more than just a setting for Peter's adventures. It represents a particular kind of American institution, the neighborhood bar where working-class men gather to escape the pressures of daily life. The conversations that happen there, while often ridiculous, echo real discussions about work, family, politics, and dreams deferred. Jerome, the bartender, observes it all with the wisdom that comes from listening to people's problems night after night. He rarely offers advice, but his presence provides stability in a place where emotions run high and judgment is temporarily suspended. The Drunken Clam is a sanctuary where the ordinary rules of polite society don't apply, where men can be honest about their fears and failures without losing face. The Pawtucket Brewery, where Peter works, represents the changing nature of American manufacturing. It's not the steel mill or automotive plant that previous generations might have worked in, but it still provides the steady employment that allows families like the Griffins to maintain their middle-class lifestyle. The brewery's various corporate changes throughout the series reflect the instability that many American workers have experienced in recent decades. Peter's co-workers, Opie, Joe, and Quagmire during his brief stint there, create a workplace dynamic that many viewers recognize from their own jobs. The casual conversations, the small rebellions against management, the friendships formed over shared frustrations, these elements ground the show's more fantastical elements in workplace reality that feels authentic. Quahog itself, while fictional, captures the essence of small New England towns. The layout includes all the necessary elements: a downtown area with small businesses, residential neighborhoods with tree-lined streets, and enough local institutions to support community life. The recurring locations like the grocery store, the post office, and various restaurants create a sense of place that makes Quahog feel real, despite the surreal events that occur there. The weather in Quahog follows New England patterns: snowy winters, mild springs, hot summers, and colorful autumns. These seasonal changes affect the characters' daily lives in subtle ways. Winter episodes often show characters bundled in coats and dealing with snow, while summer episodes feature barbecues and outdoor activities. These details create continuity and realism that supports the show's more outrageous elements. Family Guy's approach to time is interesting and worth considering as we wind down our journey tonight. Unlike shows with strict continuity, Family Guy exists in a kind of floating timeline where characters don't age and consequences rarely carry over from episode to episode. This allows for maximum creative freedom, but also creates a sense of eternal present that can be oddly comforting. The Griffin family remains frozen at particular life stages. Meg will always be the awkward teenager. Chris will always be the sweet-natured high schooler. Stewie will always be the brilliant baby. This stability provides viewers with the comfort of knowing that no matter how chaotic individual episodes become, the fundamental relationships will remain constant. The cutaway gags that Family Guy is famous for serve a function beyond simple comedy. They represent the way human minds actually work, constantly making connections, remembering random events, getting distracted by tangential thoughts. While these segments are often criticized for disrupting narrative flow, they actually mirror the way we experience consciousness, jumping from thought to thought in patterns that don't always make logical sense, but feel natural to us. The show's references to popular culture create a shared language between the creators and viewers. When Family Guy references a movie, television show, or historical event. It assumes a level of cultural literacy that creates intimacy between the show and its audience. These references also serve as time capsules, preserving moments from specific eras in American culture. The music in Family Guy deserves special attention as we prepare for sleep. The show's original compositions, from Stewie's elaborate musical numbers to the simple melodies that accompany quiet moments, demonstrate sophisticated understanding of how music affects emotion. The orchestral score swells during dramatic moments, softens during tender scenes, and provides rhythmic support for comedy sequences. Seth MacFarlane's own musical background influences the show's approach to song and dance. The elaborate production numbers scattered throughout the series showcase not just comedic timing, but genuine musical theater skills. These moments provide emotional release and allow characters to express feelings that might be difficult to convey through dialogue alone. The animation style of Family Guy has evolved over the years while maintaining its essential character. The simple, clean lines and bright colors create a visual language that's both accessible and distinctive. The character designs, while seemingly basic, actually demonstrate careful attention to body language and facial expression that communicates emotion effectively. The way characters move through space in Family Guy reflects their personalities. Peter's movements are often clumsy and enthusiastic, reflecting his impulsive nature. Lois moves with purpose and grace, suggesting her competence and self-control. Brian's movements are more human-like than dog-like, reinforcing his role as the family's intellectual. Stewie's movements combine baby-like physicality with adult-like precision, highlighting his unique position between childhood and sophistication. The Griffin family home changes subtly throughout the series, with rooms occasionally rearranged and new details added. These changes suggest the natural evolution of a lived-in space. Furniture gets replaced, decorations change with the seasons, and wear patterns develop in places where characters spend the most time. These details create the impression of a real home where real people have made real memories. As we near the end of our journey through Family Guy lore, it's worth considering what the show reveals about American family life in the early 21st century. The Griffins face many of the same challenges as real families: financial pressures, generational conflicts, changing social norms, and the difficulty of maintaining connections in an increasingly fragmented world. The show's longevity suggests that it touches something universal about family dynamics. Despite the exaggerated circumstances and impossible situations, the core relationships ring true. Parents worry about their children, siblings compete for attention, spouses negotiate the balance between individual desires and family responsibilities, and everyone struggles with the gap between who they want to be and who they actually are. The recurring themes of acceptance and belonging run throughout Family Guy's episodes. Characters search for their place in the world, sometimes finding it in unexpected places or through unlikely relationships. The show suggests that family isn't just about blood relations, but about choosing to care for each other despite obvious flaws and frequent disappointments. The community of Quahog, with all its eccentric residents and improbable situations, represents an idealized version of small-town life where everyone knows everyone else and shared experiences create bonds that survive even the most ridiculous conflicts. It's a place where consequences can be reset with each new episode, where mistakes can be forgiven, and where tomorrow always offers a fresh start. As you drift toward sleep, think about the gentle rhythms of daily life in Quahog, the morning routine of getting the family ready for school and work, the comfortable predictability of Peter's job at the brewery, the evening gatherings at the Drunken Clam where friends share their thoughts and frustrations. These ordinary moments, scattered between the extraordinary adventures, create the foundation that makes everything else possible. The love that binds the Griffin family together isn't always obvious, often buried beneath layers of sarcasm, conflict, and mutual frustration. But it's there in the small gestures: Lois making Peter's favorite meal after a difficult day, Brian staying up late to help Stewie with a project, Meg defending her family despite their treatment of her, Chris offering innocent observations that accidentally provide exactly the wisdom someone needed to hear. Let the warm familiarity of the Griffin household surround you now. Picture the soft glow of the television in their living room, the comfortable wear patterns on their favorite chairs, the family photos scattered throughout the house that document years of shared experiences. Feel the sense of belonging that comes from being part of something larger than yourself, even when that something is imperfect and often chaotic. The stories we've explored tonight reveal Family Guy as more than simple entertainment. It's a meditation on what it means to be human in contemporary America, an exploration of how families function when stripped of pretense, and a reminder that love persists even in the most unlikely circumstances. The show's ability to find humor in everyday frustrations while maintaining genuine affection for its characters creates a unique space in popular culture where viewers can laugh at themselves while feeling understood. As sleep approaches, let yourself settle into the rhythms we've discovered together, the predictable chaos of the Griffin household, the reliable friendship of the drunken clam regulars, the seasonal changes that mark time's passage in Quahog. These elements create a world that's both fantastical and familiar, where anything can happen but fundamental truths about human nature remain constant. Rest now in the knowledge that somewhere in the animated landscape of television, the Griffin family continues their daily routines. Peter will wake up tomorrow ready for another adventure. Lois will organize whatever chaos emerges. Brian will pursue his literary ambitions with renewed optimism. Stewie will scheme and dream in equal measure. Meg will hope for acceptance while finding strength in solitude. And Chris will greet each new day with innocent enthusiasm. The gentle humor and unexpected wisdom we've uncovered tonight will remain with you, providing comfort and perspective as you navigate your own daily adventures. The world of Family Guy, with all its absurdity and heart, reminds us that families are imperfect, life is unpredictable, and laughter really can be the best medicine for whatever challenges we face. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be as peaceful as a quiet evening in Quahog, where the street lights cast gentle shadows on familiar sidewalks and the promise of tomorrow's adventures waits patiently for morning to arrive. Did you know that Family Guy has been secretly building one of the most complex and disturbing universes in television history? Tonight, we're diving deep into the hidden lore that connects every bizarre moment, every throwaway joke, and every seemingly random cutaway into something far more sinister than you ever imagined. Get comfortable, because what you're about to discover about the Griffin family and their world will completely change how you see this animated sitcom forever. Welcome to a journey through the darkest corners of Quahog, where nothing is quite what it seems, and every laugh might be masking something truly terrifying. I'm going to take you through the most mind-bending theories, hidden connections, and disturbing implications that have been hiding in plain sight for over 2 decades. This isn't just about cartoon humor anymore. This is about a carefully constructed reality where time itself breaks down, where characters live and die and return without explanation, and where the very fabric of existence seems to bend to the whims of a family that might not even be human. Let's start with something that's been bothering fans for years. Have you ever noticed how characters in Family Guy seem to exist in multiple states of reality simultaneously? Peter Griffin has died countless times throughout the series, yet he continues to appear in subsequent episodes with no explanation. This isn't just cartoon logic at work. There's something much deeper happening here, something that suggests the Griffin family exists outside the normal rules of life and death. Consider this carefully. In one episode, Peter is literally crushed by a falling piano. In another, he's shot point blank in the chest. He's been decapitated, blown up, and killed in ways too numerous to count. Yet he always returns, usually within the same episode, sometimes carrying the memory of his death, sometimes acting as if nothing happened at all. This pattern extends to every member of the family, creating what theorists call the resurrection phenomenon. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. The show has established that Peter remembers some of his deaths, but not others. In certain episodes, he makes direct references to previous fatal incidents, treating them as if they were merely inconvenient experiences rather than life-ending events. This suggests that the Griffin family exists in a state of quantum immortality, where their consciousness simply shifts to alternate timelines whenever they die in one reality. The implications of this are staggering. If the Griffins can't truly die, what does that make them? Are they some kind of interdimensional beings? Are they trapped in an endless cycle of death and rebirth? Or are they perhaps already dead, existing in some kind of purgatorial state where their worst impulses are allowed to manifest without permanent consequences? This theory gains even more weight when you examine the nature of their world. Quahog, Rhode Island, isn't just an ordinary small town. It's a place where the laws of physics bend and break on a daily basis. Characters regularly fall from impossible heights without injury, survive explosions that should level city blocks, and experience transformations that defy biological possibility. The town itself seems to reshape itself to accommodate whatever narrative demands the moment requires. Look at the Clam, the local bar where Peter spends most of his time. The interior layout changes from episode to episode, sometimes dramatically. Rooms appear and disappear, the building size fluctuates wildly, and the bar somehow manages to accommodate everything from small, intimate gatherings to massive concerts and events. This isn't just inconsistent animation. It's evidence that reality itself is malleable in Quahog. The same phenomenon affects the Griffin house. Rooms appear when needed and vanish when not required. The basement sometimes contains a simple laundry area. Other times, it's a vast underground complex with multiple levels and impossible architecture. The house has been destroyed and rebuilt so many times that it's essentially become a ship of Theseus' paradox. At what point did the original Griffin home cease to exist and become something else entirely? But the most disturbing aspect of Family Guy lore involves the nature of time itself in this universe. The show has been running for over 20 years, yet the characters haven't aged. Stewie remains a baby, Meg is still a teenager, and Chris continues through high school perpetually. This isn't just a cartoon convention. The show has explicitly addressed the passage of time on multiple occasions, creating paradoxes that suggest something is fundamentally wrong with how time functions in their reality. Consider Stewie's advanced intelligence and technological capabilities. This isn't just a genius baby. Stewie has access to time travel technology, advanced weaponry, and scientific knowledge that surpasses anything available in our reality. He's built nuclear weapons in his bedroom, created sentient robots, and developed interdimensional travel devices. These aren't the inventions of a human child, no matter how intelligent. They're the creations of something far beyond human understanding. The time travel episodes reveal even more disturbing implications. When Stewie and Brian travel through time, they encounter multiple versions of themselves and their family members. Some of these versions are dramatically different, suggesting that the timeline they inhabit is just one of countless variations. In some timelines, the family members have different personalities, different relationships, and different fates. This raises the question of whether the Griffins we follow are even the original versions of these characters, or just one set among infinite possibilities. Brian's character provides another piece of this cosmic puzzle. He's a dog who walks upright, drives cars, drinks alcohol, and engages in complex philosophical discussions. The show treats this as perfectly normal, but the implications are horrifying when you consider the biological impossibility of his existence. Brian isn't just an anthropomorphic cartoon character. He's an aberration, a violation of natural law that somehow exists within this distorted reality. Brian's atheism becomes particularly significant in this context. He's the only character who consistently questions the nature of existence and reality. His philosophical discussions with Stewie often touch on themes of mortality, consciousness, and the meaning of existence. It's as if Brian is the only character who recognizes that their reality is fundamentally wrong, yet he's trapped within it just like everyone else. The show's treatment of religion and spirituality adds another layer to this mystery. Characters regularly encounter divine beings, travel to heaven and hell, and interact with supernatural forces. These aren't metaphorical episodes or dreams. They're presented as literal experiences within the show's canon. Death himself is a recurring character, depicted as a fallible being who can be tricked, bargained with, or even temporarily replaced. This suggests that the afterlife in the Family Guy universe is just as chaotic and rule-bending as the mortal realm. Peter's encounters with God reveal perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this reality. God is portrayed as incompetent, petty, and frequently absent from his duties. He makes mistakes, gets involved in trivial disputes, and seems to have lost control of his own creation. If God himself is fallible and chaotic in this universe, it explains why reality operates with such inconsistent and disturbing rules. The chicken fights represent another crucial element in understanding the true nature of this reality. Peter's battles with Ernie the giant chicken aren't just random comedy sequences. They're reality-breaking events that cause massive destruction across Quahog, yet somehow never result in permanent consequences. Buildings are destroyed, innocent people are presumably killed, and the entire infrastructure of the town is regularly devastated. Yet everything returns to normal by the next episode, as if these catastrophic events never happened. This suggests that Quahog exists in a state of constant reset, where major traumatic events are simply erased from collective memory. The townspeople continue their lives as if nothing happened, which implies either mass amnesia or the existence of multiple parallel realities that overlap and replace each other. The chicken fights might actually be tears in the fabric of reality itself, moments when the artificial nature of their world becomes visible through the chaos. The cutaway gags provide even more evidence of reality distortion. When Peter begins a story with his characteristic phrase about a time that's worse than something else, the narrative literally shifts to a completely different reality. These aren't just flashbacks or memories. They're alternate dimensions where different rules apply and different versions of history have played out. The fact that Peter can access these realities at will suggests he has some level of interdimensional awareness or control. Some of these cutaway realities are obviously fictional, referencing movies, television shows, or historical events. But others seem to be genuine alternate versions of the Family Guy universe where small changes have created dramatically different outcomes. This creates a multiverse structure where Peter's consciousness can jump between realities, experiencing different versions of events and bringing that knowledge back to his primary timeline. Meg's role in this cosmic horror becomes clearer when you examine how other characters treat her. The family's abuse of Meg isn't just mean-spirited humor. It's ritualistic and consistent across all timelines and realities. Even in alternate universes where other aspects of their lives are different, the treatment of Meg remains constant. This suggests she serves some kind of specific function in maintaining the stability of their reality. Some theories propose that Meg is actually the anchor point that keeps their chaotic universe from completely falling apart. Her suffering might be the price paid for the family's immortality and reality-bending abilities. The more they abuse her, the more stable their impossible existence becomes. This would explain why even when Meg tries to improve her situation or gain acceptance, the universe seems to conspire against her, forcing her back into her role as the family scapegoat. Lois presents her own mysteries. Despite being married to Peter and living in the same chaotic reality, she often displays knowledge and abilities that seem beyond her apparent character. She's multilingual, has extensive combat training, has connections to wealthy and powerful families, and occasionally demonstrates skills that suggest a much more complex background than her suburban housewife persona would indicate. Her maiden name is Pewterschmidt, connecting her to a family of extreme wealth and influence. But the show has revealed that the Pewterschmidt fortune comes from sources that are never fully explained. They have connections to Nazi Germany, mysterious business dealings, and enough power to manipulate major political and economic events. This isn't just old money. This is money that comes from sources that operate outside normal human society. Lois's piano playing takes on new significance in this context. Music has always been associated with supernatural and reality-altering powers in mythology and fiction. When Lois plays piano, She often enters a trance-like state where she becomes completely absorbed in the music. Could her playing be some kind of ritual that helps maintain the stability of their distorted reality? Is she unconsciously channeling forces that keep their impossible world functioning? The town of Quahog itself contains numerous locations that defy logical explanation. The Drunken Clam Bar exists in a constant state of flux. Tom Tucker's news station somehow manages to cover every bizarre event that happens in town, no matter how impossible or reality-breaking it might be. The grocery store, the movie theater, and other local businesses seem to have unlimited resources and the ability to accommodate whatever the plot requires. But perhaps most disturbing is Quahog's relationship with the outside world. Characters regularly travel to other cities and countries, yet these locations often seem just as distorted and rule-breaking as Quahog itself. When the family goes to Europe, they encounter the same kind of impossible situations and reality-bending events they experience at home. This suggests that the distortion isn't limited to their hometown, but extends throughout their entire universe. Cleveland's move to Virginia and subsequent return provides another clue to the nature of their reality. During his absence, Cleveland had his own show in a different location with different characters and storylines. Yet when he returned to Quahog, he seamlessly reintegrated into the Family Guy universe as if nothing had changed. This suggests that characters can literally move between different fictional realities while maintaining their essential identities. The evil monkey in Chris's closet represents one of the most obvious supernatural elements that the family accepts without question. This isn't just a monkey that happens to live in their house. It's a malevolent entity that exists partially outside normal reality, able to appear and disappear at will, and possessing knowledge and abilities that suggest it's not bound by the same rules as other characters. When the evil monkey's backstory was finally revealed, it showed a complex history involving betrayal, revenge, and supernatural justice. But the fact that Chris lived with this entity for years without the family taking serious action suggests they're either unable to perceive the true nature of supernatural threats, or they're so accustomed to reality-bending phenomena that they've become desensitized to genuine danger. The show's treatment of violence provides another disturbing window into the nature of their reality. Characters regularly engage in brutal combat, use deadly weapons, and inflict injuries that should result in permanent disability or death. Yet these violent encounters rarely have lasting consequences. Bodies heal impossibly quickly, psychological trauma is ignored, and characters continue their relationships as if attempted murder was just a minor disagreement. This isn't just cartoon violence logic. The show has established that pain and injury do matter in their world. Characters react to pain, seek medical treatment, and sometimes suffer long-term consequences from their actions. But the threshold for what constitutes permanent harm seems to be much higher than in normal reality, suggesting that their physical forms are more resilient or fundamentally different from normal human bodies. The celebrity appearances in Family Guy create another layer of reality confusion. When real celebrities appear on the show, they're often portrayed in ways that are completely at odds with their real-world personas. Some are depicted as evil, others as incompetent, and many are shown in situations that would be impossible in reality. These aren't just parodies or satirical representations. They're presented as literal encounters within the show's universe. This raises questions about the relationship between the Family Guy universe and our reality. Are these actual alternate versions of real people, or are they fictional constructs created by whatever force maintains their distorted world? The fact that these celebrity characters often have knowledge of events from the real world suggests some kind of connection to our reality, but their behavior and circumstances are so different that they can't be the same individuals. Adam West's portrayal as the mayor of Quahog provides the most extensive example of this phenomenon. The real Adam West was involved with the show for many years before his death, playing a version of himself that bore little resemblance to his actual personality. This fictional Adam West had supernatural experiences, engaged in bizarre political policies, and interacted with the Griffin family as if they were real people in his world. The fact that the real Adam West participated in creating this alternate version of himself suggests a blurring of the lines between fiction and reality that extends beyond the show's universe. It's as if the Family Guy reality has the ability to reach into our world and influence real people to participate in its narrative structure. The show's handling of historical events reveals another disturbing aspect of their reality. Characters regularly travel back in time to witness or participate in major historical moments, but their presence often changes the outcome of these events in ways that should have massive consequences for their present-day reality. Yet somehow the timeline always corrects itself, or the changes are ignored in subsequent episodes. This suggests that history itself is malleable in their universe, subject to constant revision and correction by forces that operate outside normal temporal mechanics. The Griffin family's ability to witness and alter historical events without permanent consequences implies they exist outside the normal flow of cause and effect. Stewie's sexual orientation and romantic relationships add another layer of complexity to the reality distortion. The show has never definitively established Stewie's sexuality, leaving it deliberately ambiguous despite numerous hints and references. This isn't just uncertainty about a character's personal life. It's as if Stewie exists in a state of quantum sexuality, where all possibilities remain open simultaneously. When Stewie does engage in romantic or sexual situations, they often involve time travel, alternate realities, or impossible circumstances. His relationship with himself from alternate timelines, his interactions with future versions of other characters, and his romantic encounters with beings from different realities all suggest that normal human relationship dynamics don't apply to him. Brian's romantic relationships follow similar patterns of reality distortion. He's been involved with human women, other dogs, and beings from alternate realities. These relationships are treated as normal within the show's universe, but they represent violations of biological and social norms that should be impossible in any consistent reality. The recurring theme of characters breaking the fourth wall provides perhaps the most direct evidence that they're aware of their fictional nature. When characters make references to the show itself, acknowledge the presence of cameras, or directly address the audience, they're demonstrating consciousness of their status as fictional constructs. Yet they continue to behave as if their reality is genuine and consequential. This creates a paradox where characters are simultaneously aware of their fictional nature and committed to maintaining the illusion of their reality. It's as if they're trapped in a performance they can't escape, forced to continue their roles even though they understand the artificial nature of their existence. The show's treatment of mental illness and psychological trauma becomes particularly disturbing when viewed through this lens. Characters regularly experience events that should result in severe psychological damage, yet they continue functioning as if nothing happened. Peter has been through countless traumatic experiences. Meg has suffered years of abuse and rejection, and Chris has dealt with supernatural threats and family dysfunction that should have lasting psychological effects. Their apparent immunity to psychological trauma suggests either that their minds operate differently from normal humans, or that the reality they inhabit somehow prevents the formation of lasting psychological damage. Either possibility raises questions about the fundamental nature of their consciousness and identity. The economic system of Quahog defies logical explanation. Peter works at a brewery, yet the family maintains a middle-class lifestyle that includes expensive vacations, constant dining out, and the ability to replace destroyed property without apparent financial strain. The cost of living in their reality seems to operate on completely different principles than any real economic system. Local businesses somehow manage to stay open despite constant destruction and the bizarre behavior of their customers. The bank continues to provide services, even though it's regularly robbed or destroyed. The hospital treats impossible injuries and supernatural conditions as routine medical cases. This suggests an economic system that operates independently of normal supply and demand principles. The show's treatment of technology reveals another aspect of their reality distortion. Characters have access to futuristic devices and impossible inventions, yet they also use outdated technology and live in what appears to be contemporary society. Time periods blend together in ways that suggest their reality exists outside normal temporal progression. Stewie's advanced technology coexists with Peter's primitive understanding of basic concepts. Lois uses modern communication devices while also displaying knowledge of historical events that she shouldn't have witnessed. This temporal confusion extends throughout their universe, creating a reality where past, present, and future exist simultaneously. The educational system in Quahog provides another window into the distorted nature of their reality. Chris and Meg attend high school, yet their education seems to consist primarily of bizarre adventures and encounters with supernatural phenomena. Their teachers are often incompetent or malevolent, and the curriculum appears to have no connection to real educational standards. Despite this chaotic educational environment, the characters somehow maintain enough knowledge to function in society. They can read, write, and perform basic mathematical calculations when the plot requires it, yet they also display shocking ignorance about fundamental concepts. This selective competence suggests that knowledge in their reality is distributed based on narrative necessity rather than logical learning processes. Religious and spiritual experiences in the Family Guy universe are treated as literal events rather than matters of faith or belief. Characters regularly encounter angels, demons, divine beings, and supernatural forces as physical presences in their world. These encounters often contradict established religious doctrines and present theological concepts in chaotic and illogical ways. The fact that multiple religious and spiritual systems seem to exist simultaneously in their reality suggests a universe where belief itself shapes existence. Different characters' spiritual experiences reflect their personal expectations rather than consistent universal truths, implying that reality adapts itself to accommodate conflicting belief systems. As we reach the end of this exploration into the hidden depths of Family Guy lore, the picture that emerges is far more complex and disturbing than the surface comedy would suggest. We're looking at a universe where the fundamental laws of reality are constantly in flux, where consciousness and identity operate on principles that defy normal understanding, and where the characters exist in a state of perpetual uncertainty about their own nature and existence. The Griffin family isn't just a dysfunctional cartoon family. They're entities, trapped in a reality that operates outside the normal rules of existence, forced to repeat patterns of behavior while occasionally glimpsing the artificial nature of their world. Their immortality comes at the cost of genuine growth and change. Their relationships are defined by roles they cannot escape, and their reality is maintained through forces they cannot understand or control. This hidden lore transforms Family Guy from a simple, animated comedy into something resembling cosmic horror, where the greatest terror isn't monsters or supernatural threats, but the gradual realization that existence itself might be fundamentally meaningless and arbitrary. The character's ability to laugh and find humor in their situation becomes an act of defiance against the absurdity of their existence, or perhaps the only coping mechanism available to consciousness trapped in an impossible reality. Sweet dreams, and remember that sometimes the most disturbing truths hide behind the most innocent laughter. Picture this. You're lying in bed, phone in hand, ready to drift off to the soothing sound of random Family Guy trivia. Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because tonight we're diving deep into the most bizarre, shocking, and downright disturbing moments that have happened to every single character in Quahog. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at your favorite dysfunctional cartoon family the same way again. Now, before we start this journey through animated trauma, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if the worst day of your life was broadcast on national television for millions to laugh at? Well, that's basically every episode of Family Guy for these poor fictional souls. So grab your favorite pillow, get comfortable, and let's explore the darkest corners of Seth MacFarlane's twisted imagination. Starting alphabetically with Adam West, because why not begin with a mayor who's nuttier than a fruitcake? This eccentric political figure finally found his soulmate when he married Carol, Lois's sister. For a guy who regularly talks to his own hand and thinks cardboard cutouts are real people, Finding true love seemed like a miracle. The wedding was beautiful, the honeymoon was passionate, and for once in his bizarre life, Adam West looked genuinely happy. But happiness in Family Guy is like a snowball in hell. It melts faster than you can say cutaway gag. Carol decided that one mayor wasn't enough for her appetite, so she started having an affair with another man. When Adam discovered this betrayal, instead of walking away with his dignity intact, he challenged the other guy to a duel. Because nothing says rational response like pistols at dawn, right? The worst part wasn't just the cheating. It was watching this lonely, eccentric man desperately fight for someone who clearly didn't deserve his devotion. Carol promised it would never happen again, but we all knew that was complete garbage. Adam deserved so much better than a woman who treated his heart like a revolving door. Moving on to Angela, Peter's former boss at the toy company. Unlike most characters who simply disappear without explanation, Angela got a proper send-off that hit viewers right in the feels. When voice actress Carrie Fisher passed away in real life, the show made the touching decision to address it directly in the series. According to Peter's explanation, Angela died doing what she loved, which was apparently swimming less than 20 minutes after eating. Now, we all know that's an old wives' tale about getting cramps, but in the Family Guy universe, it was enough to send this strong, independent businesswoman to her watery grave. It's both absurd and oddly respectful, which perfectly captures the show's ability to blend humor with genuine emotion. Barbara Pewterschmidt, or Babs as she's known to friends, has endured decades of her husband Carter's wandering eye. This woman has put up with more infidelity than a reality TV show contestant, and somehow she keeps forgiving him. The breaking point came when Peter caught Carter in bed with yet another woman, and after some classic Griffin family blackmail shenanigans, the secret inevitably came out. Picture the devastation on Babs's face when she realized that everyone knew about her husband's latest affair before she did. The humiliation of being the last to know, the embarrassment of having your private pain become public gossip. It's enough to break anyone's spirit. She kicked his crusty behind out of the house and tried to start fresh, but love makes fools of us all, and she eventually took him back. The irony is that Babs isn't exactly innocent herself. She's had her own affairs over the years, including that memorable encounter with Jackie Gleason. But there's something particularly cruel about Carter's public humiliation of his wife that makes this betrayal sting more than the others. Bonnie Swanson represents the dark side of suburban marriage. When she's not cheating on her paralyzed husband, she's literally trying to murder him with ground glass in his food, or buying rickety houses hoping they'll collapse on him. But karma has a way of coming full circle, and Bonnie got a taste of her own medicine in the most humiliating way possible. During their daughter's birthday party, with friends and family gathered around, Bonnie overheard Joe having an affair with a colleague through the baby monitor. Imagine the mortification of discovering your spouse's betrayal while surrounded by people who are supposed to be celebrating your family. The timing couldn't have been worse, and the method of discovery was like something out of a soap opera nightmare. The fact that this happened during what should have been a joyous occasion for their child makes it even more devastating. Bonnie may be a serial cheater herself, but nobody deserves to have their private pain exposed in such a public and humiliating way. Now let's talk about Brian Griffin, the philosophical dog with more emotional baggage than a therapy convention. Poor Brian has endured countless injuries over the years, from losing his teeth in a fight with Peter to getting his face smashed by a fire hydrant. But the absolute worst thing that happened to him was his temporary death in season 12. Getting hit by that car and actually dying, even if it was only for 2 episodes, represents the ultimate trauma for any character. Death is supposed to be permanent, final, the end of all stories. For Brian to experience that ultimate fear and then somehow return to life, the psychological impact must have been enormous. Think about it from his perspective. One moment he's crossing the street, the next he's presumably facing whatever comes after life. Then suddenly he's back, but with the knowledge that death is real, permanent, and can happen at any moment. That kind of existential trauma would mess with anyone's head, even a talking dog who writes pretentious novels. Bruce's story is one of love, acceptance, and heartbreaking loss. After years of hiding his true self, he finally came out, married his longtime partner Jeffrey, and even had a baby through surrogacy. For the first time in his life, Bruce was living authentically, openly, and happily. He had everything he'd ever wanted: a husband, a child, and the freedom to be himself without shame or fear. But Family Guy has never been kind to happiness, and during what should have been a perfect vacation in Bermuda, tragedy struck in the most brutal way imaginable. Jeffrey's hat fell into the water, and being the loving husband he was, he jumped in to retrieve it. That simple act of devotion cost him his life when a shark attacked and killed him in front of Bruce's horrified eyes. The imagery of watching Jeffrey get torn apart by a predator, followed by the soul-crushing sight of 2 coffins being loaded onto the plane, represents a level of trauma that goes beyond physical pain. Bruce had to watch his dreams of a perfect life literally get devoured before his eyes. Carter Pewterschmidt is arguably one of the most evil characters on the show. This billionaire has hidden cancer cures for profit, destroyed countless lives for money, and shown no remorse for any of his actions. But karma caught up with him in the most ironic way possible when Lois accidentally shot him in the head. The bullet caused severe brain damage that completely changed Carter's personality. Suddenly, this cruel capitalist became kind, generous, and caring. He wanted to give away all his money to charity and live a life of compassion instead of greed. For the first time ever, Carter was actually happy and at peace with himself. But Barbara couldn't stand the thought of losing their fortune, so she shot him in the head again, reversing the brain damage and bringing back the cruel version of her husband. The tragedy isn't just that Carter got shot twice by his own family. It's that he briefly experienced what it felt like to be a good person, only to have that stolen away from him. Chris Griffin's worst moment doesn't involve getting turned into sausage or any of the other bizarre things that happen to him regularly. No. His darkest hour came when the Griffin house caught fire and Herbert the creepy neighbor rushed in to supposedly save him. For a brief moment, it looked like Herbert might actually be a hero, but instead of carrying Chris to safety, he took him straight back to his own house. The most disturbing part wasn't even Herbert's actions. It was his family's complete lack of concern. When they discovered what happened, their reaction was basically that Herbert had earned the right to kidnap Chris. The casual acceptance of what was clearly an inappropriate situation shows just how little Chris's family actually cares about his well-being. Cleveland Brown has endured countless humiliations over the years, from his bathtub crashing through his house repeatedly to various other physical mishaps. But the absolute worst thing that happened to him was being betrayed by one of his closest friends in the most heinous way imaginable. Joe Swanson tricked Cleveland into going to what he thought was a vacation in Florida, but was actually a retirement home run by seniors who harvest organs from unsuspecting victims. Joe wanted Peter's legs for himself, but when that plan fell through, he sent Cleveland as a substitute without warning him about the danger. Imagine discovering that someone you trusted with your life had essentially sold you out to organ harvesters. Cleveland literally lost his legs because Joe was too selfish to give up his twisted scheme. The betrayal cuts deeper than any physical wound because it came from someone he considered family. The mystery of Cleveland Jr. represents one of the show's darkest unsolved cases. The original Cleveland Jr. was energetic, slim, and full of life. But suddenly, without explanation, he was replaced by a completely different person who was overweight, slow, and bore no resemblance to the original character. The official explanation is that the original was replaced by a secret agent, but what actually happened to the real Cleveland Jr. remains unknown. The implications are terrifying. Is he dead? Is he being held captive somewhere? Has he been brainwashed? The uncertainty is almost worse than knowing the truth would be. This represents every parent's worst nightmare, having their child disappear and replaced by an imposter while everyone else pretends nothing happened. Cleveland doesn't even seem to notice or care that his son is completely different, which adds another layer of tragedy to the situation. Consuela works harder than anyone else in Quahog. fighting for her fellow maids while cleaning houses for multiple families and even Superman. But her dedication to helping others led her to work for James Woods, a decision she would come to regret in the most horrific way possible. In one of the show's darkest moments, Consuela revealed that Woods had assaulted her nephew, who later took his own life as a result of the trauma. This single line of dialogue carries more weight than entire episodes of physical comedy. It's a reminder that behind the jokes and gags, these characters have real pain and real trauma. The fact that Consuela continued working and fighting for others despite carrying this enormous burden speaks to her incredible strength. But nobody should have to endure such a devastating loss, especially when it could have been prevented. Death himself, the actual Grim Reaper, experienced his own form of mortality when he twisted his ankle while chasing Peter. Suddenly, the being responsible for all death on Earth was sidelined by a simple injury. Without Death able to do his job, chaos erupted as accidents piled up with no consequences. Being forced to hand over his powers to Peter Griffin, of all people, must have been absolutely humiliating for such a powerful entity. Imagine being rendered helpless by something as mundane as a twisted ankle when you're supposed to be one of the most feared forces in the universe. The irony of Death being unable to die from his own injury while watching Peter bungle the most important job in existence must have been torture. Sometimes the worst pain isn't physical. It's watching someone else destroy everything you've worked for. Diane Simmons's downfall began when she discovered she was being replaced by a younger news anchor. After dedicating her life to journalism, the industry she loved was throwing her away like yesterday's newspaper. The rejection and humiliation drove her to madness, leading to a killing spree at James Woods' mansion party. Her plan to frame Tom Tucker and reclaim her career was as desperate as it was violent. But when it all fell apart and she was about to kill Lois, Stewie ended her reign of terror with a single shot. Going from respected journalist to murderous villain to corpse in a matter of hours represents a complete life collapse that few characters have experienced. Dr. Hartman's medical incompetence is legendary, but the one time he actually did his job correctly, it ruined his career. During a routine prostate exam on Peter, he performed the procedure exactly as he was supposed to, but Peter's ignorance and embarrassment led to false assault charges that cost Hartman his medical license. The injustice of losing his livelihood for doing his job properly must have been devastating for someone who, despite his flaws, genuinely wants to help people. Being dragged through court and having his reputation destroyed over a misunderstanding shows how quickly a life can be ruined by ignorance and fear. When Peter later needed the same procedure and had to crawl back to the doctor he destroyed, the humiliation was complete. Hartman eventually got his license back, but the damage to his reputation and the trauma of the legal battle left permanent scars. Ernie the giant chicken has survived countless brutal fights with Peter over the years, but his battle with Meg might have been his last. When Meg moved in with her boyfriend's family and Ernie insulted Peter, she stood up for her father in the most violent way possible. Despite all the abuse Peter has heaped on her over the years, Meg's loyalty to her family ran deep enough that she couldn't stand hearing someone else trash-talk him. Her brutal decapitation of Ernie was both shocking and oddly touching, showing that family bonds can survive even the worst treatment. The sight of Ernie's headless body running around in front of his horrified family was disturbing, even by Family Guy standards. The fact that we didn't get the usual close-up of his eyes suggests this might have been his final defeat, making Meg the one person who could do what Peter never could. The evil monkey's story is actually quite sad when you think about it. For years he terrorized Chris by angrily pointing at him from the closet, but it turns out he was just too shy to start a conversation. All that time, he wasn't evil at all, just socially awkward and misunderstood. But before this revelation, the poor monkey was beaten up by Brian's son Dylan. Being attacked by someone when you're already struggling with social anxiety and communication issues must have been incredibly traumatic. The monkey was already isolated and afraid, and the violence only made things worse. Glenn Quagmire's entire identity revolves around his sexual prowess and his most prized anatomical feature. So when a shark bit off his manhood during a skiing trip, It represented the ultimate nightmare for someone whose whole personality is built around sexual conquest. Watching Quagmire become a shell of himself, miserable and lost without the one thing that defined him, was both comedic and genuinely sad. His entire sense of self-worth was tied to something that could be taken away in an instant, showing how fragile our identities really are. The solution, getting Ida's old equipment with a huge mole on it, was both generous and awkward. Having to explain to potential partners that you're using your father's former anatomy would be enough to give anyone performance anxiety for life. The greased-up deaf guy remained a mystery for years, slipping away from every attempt to catch him while spouting his signature catchphrase. But his origin story revealed a tragic accident that changed him from an ordinary businessman into the greasy enigma we know today. Getting caught in a grease truck explosion severe enough to cause deafness and require constant lubrication to survive sounds absolutely horrifying. Imagine going from a normal life to being a permanently slippery outcast who can't hear and can barely communicate with others. The transformation from respected professional to neighborhood oddity represents a complete loss of identity and social connection. He went from being someone people respected to someone they actively tried to avoid or capture. Herbert's backstory adds a dark historical element to his character. As a World War II pilot who was shot down and sent to a concentration camp, he experienced some of humanity's darkest hours. Being forced to do degrading work like sorting recyclables while imprisoned shows how war can strip away dignity and humanity. The fact that he describes the sticky trash as the worst part, while clearly downplaying much more serious trauma, suggests a coping mechanism of focusing on minor irritations to avoid confronting deeper pain. His current inappropriate behavior toward Chris might stem from the psychological damage of his wartime experiences. Ida's journey represents the struggle of living authentically while facing rejection from those you love most. When she came out as transgender to her son Quagmire, instead of receiving support, she was shunned and rejected. Being abandoned by your own child for being true to yourself is one of the cruelest forms of emotional pain. Even after Quagmire eventually accepted her, he later forced her to choose between him and her relationship with Brian. Making someone pick between their child and their chance at happiness is pure selfishness, especially after she had already made the generous gesture of giving him her former anatomy. Joe Swanson's transformation from paraplegic to quadriplegic during a bull run represents every disabled person's worst fear, losing even more independence and control over their life. Being paralyzed from the neck down instead of just the waist changed everything for him. The abandonment that followed was even worse than the physical trauma. His wife Bonnie immediately left him for Europe, claiming she didn't sign up for this level of care. His friends tried to help, but eventually dumped him in a terrible state facility when it became too much work. Being betrayed by both your spouse and your closest friends when you need them most is a special kind of hell. Joe eventually regained some function, but the emotional scars of abandonment would last forever. Jerome carries the heaviest emotional burden of any character on the show. Losing his wife to cancer just 1 week after their wedding, followed by his daughter's death from pneumonia 6 weeks later, represents a level of tragedy that transcends comedy. Even in a cartoon universe where death and destruction happen regularly, Jerome's story stands out as genuinely heartbreaking. The timing of these losses, coming right after what should have been the happiest moments of his life, makes the tragedy even more poignant. Jillian's happiness was shattered when Diane Simmons murdered her husband Derek during her killing spree. After being jerked around by Brian and finally finding a good man to marry, having that torn away by random violence must have been devastating. The look of absolute devastation on her face when she realized her husband was dead spoke volumes about the depth of her loss. Going from newlywed bliss to widow in a matter of moments represents the kind of trauma that changes someone forever. The Kool-Aid Man, despite being a corporate mascot, became a victim of Stewie's evil twin in one of the show's more surreal moments. Having your glass body smashed and your contents consumed by a psychotic baby represents a uniquely cartoonish form of murder. The fact that he returned later suggests some form of immortality, but the experience of being destroyed and consumed must have been traumatic even for a sentient beverage container. Lois Griffin has endured tremendous physical and emotional trauma over the years. While getting killed by Stewie in a simulation doesn't count as real, her other experiences are genuinely horrific. Getting boiling oil thrown on her by Peter left her with severe burns covering her entire body. But arguably worse was the mental trauma of watching Peter perform oral acts on her sick mother due to a hypnotherapy mishap. Physical burns heal, but that mental image would haunt her forever. The violation of boundaries and the grotesque nature of the incident make it worse than any physical injury. Loretta Brown's death was both tragic and disturbing. Falling to her death when Peter destroyed her house was bad enough, but Quagmire's necrophilic intentions afterward added another layer of horror to her fate. Being killed by your ex-husband's friend's stupidity and then having your corpse violated represents a complete denial of dignity, even in death. The fact that this was played for laughs makes it even more disturbing. Meg Griffin has endured so much abuse that choosing just one worst moment seems impossible. She's been shot, stabbed, humiliated, and ignored by her family for years. But losing her arms and legs while becoming deaf, dumb, and blind represents the ultimate disability nightmare. Being completely helpless and unable to communicate or care for yourself while still being conscious and aware would be torture beyond imagination. The combination of physical disability and sensory deprivation creates a prison worse than any jail cell. Mort Goldman's loss of his wife Muriel was made even more tragic by his inability to think of anything positive to say about their marriage. After decades together, being unable to recall a single happy memory suggests a relationship built on obligation rather than love. The fact that she died violently during Diane's killing spree adds sudden trauma to what might have otherwise been a natural parting. Having your spouse murdered while you're realizing your marriage was empty creates a complex grief that would be hard to process. Neil Goldman's humiliation when Meg kissed him during a crisis was compounded by his own poor judgment in broadcasting the moment publicly. Instead of treasuring a private moment, he turned it into a public spectacle that embarrassed them both. His subsequent suicide attempt showed how deeply the rejection affected him, but his actions had already ruined any chance he might have had with Meg. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are consequences of our own poor choices. Peter Griffin has caused enormous destruction throughout the series, but he's also been on the receiving end of significant trauma. Learning that his father figure wasn't his biological father created an identity crisis that shook his understanding of who he was. The existential pain of questioning your entire life story and family history cuts deeper than any physical injury. Peter's struggle to understand his place in the world after this revelation showed a vulnerability that's rare for his character. Seamus represents the ultimate survivor, having lost most of his body parts to various predators over the years. Whether it was James Woods, sharks, or other creatures, the systematic loss of limbs and organs while somehow remaining alive and conscious is a nightmare beyond comprehension. The fact that his origin story keeps changing suggests that the trauma was so severe he can't even remember it clearly. Living as mostly wood and prosthetics while maintaining consciousness would be a constant reminder of everything he's lost. Stewie Griffin has endured incredible trauma for a 1-year-old baby. From dingo attacks to being fused with his teddy bear, his young life has been filled with horror. But the worst incident was when he split his head open falling downstairs, and his family refused to get him medical attention. Instead of rushing him to the hospital, they tried to cover up the injury and hide the evidence. Watching a raccoon gnaw on his exposed brain, while his family worried more about getting in trouble than his health, shows a level of neglect that borders on criminal. The fact that he spent months in a coma while they continued to prioritize their own convenience over his life demonstrates how little they truly care about him despite their occasional shows of affection. Tom Tucker's identity crisis when he faced replacement by a younger anchor led to a complete career meltdown. Following Peter's advice to get tattoos live on air was the final nail in his professional coffin, destroying everything he'd worked for his entire life. Being fired from the job that defined him and then nearly committing suicide over the loss shows how completely his sense of self was tied to his career. The humiliation of having his replacement want to interview him before his suicide attempt added insult to injury. Trisha Takanawa's fate during the Y2K apocalypse episode, becoming a victim of cannibalism, represents the ultimate objectification. Being reduced to literal food for other people strips away every aspect of humanity and dignity. Even in a post-apocalyptic setting, the casual way her consumption was discussed shows how completely society had broken down and how little value was placed on individual human life. Each of these characters has faced their own unique form of suffering, from physical trauma to emotional devastation to existential crisis. What makes these moments particularly impactful is how they contrast with the show's usual comedic tone. When Family Guy decides to get dark, it doesn't hold back. These aren't just random gags or throwaway jokes. They're genuine character moments that reveal the psychological depth hiding beneath the surface humor. The fact that these characters continue to function and interact normally after experiencing such trauma speaks to both human resilience and the show's commitment to treating serious subjects with the same casual attitude as everything else. Understanding these worst moments helps us appreciate the full scope of what these characters have endured. It's easy to laugh at their misfortunes when they're presented as comedy, but examining them seriously reveals a tapestry of human suffering that would challenge anyone's sanity. The genius of Family Guy lies in its ability to make us laugh at things that would horrify us in real life. By presenting extreme trauma in a comedic context, the show allows us to process difficult emotions and experiences in a safe environment. These characters serve as vessels for our own fears and anxieties, experiencing the worst possible outcomes so we don't have to. Their resilience in the face of unimaginable suffering provides a strange form of comfort and inspiration. Whether it's betrayal by loved ones, physical mutilation, loss of identity, or complete abandonment, every character has faced their ultimate nightmare and somehow survived to appear in the next episode. The cyclical nature of their suffering, where trauma is quickly forgotten and life returns to normal, reflects how we often deal with our own pain by compartmentalizing and moving forward rather than dwelling on past hurts. But tonight, as you drift off to sleep, you can take comfort in knowing that no matter how bad your day was, at least you're not a Family Guy character. At least you don't have to worry about your house being destroyed by a giant chicken, your spouse cheating with your neighbor, or your family refusing to take you to the hospital when your brain is exposed. Sweet dreams, and remember that in the morning, you'll wake up in a world that's probably a little less chaotic than Quahog, Rhode Island. Though given the state of things these days, that might not be as comforting as it used to be. But hey, that's a worry for tomorrow. Tonight, just let the absurd suffering of animated characters lull you into peaceful slumber, secure in the knowledge that your problems are probably more manageable than theirs. Sleep tight, and don't let the evil monkeys point at you from the closet.